Hello, and welcome to Goldilocks Wellness. I'm Hadley Henriette, and I'm here today with someone I'm very excited to present to you, Dr. Patrick Porter. He is the creator of BrainTap, which is a revolutionary device. I'm going to just show it to you here because I think that sort of sometimes have it on. And it works like this. Well, it doesn't work like this. This is how you put it on. And you'll pretty much find me like this at least once a day with that. I've been using it extensively, which is probably one of the reasons I'm so incredibly excited to talk to you for today. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Hadley. It's great to be here.
I just want to kind of get right into it because I think this is such interesting technology and it's not super easy to understand. I would say even the first few times I saw it and even used it, I don't think I quite knew what was going on and that this was like a neuro algorithm that works with neuroscience and that it was really going to change my brain. I didn't really get any of that at all. And I'm not really sure that you have to get it to use it,
Right.
but that is what I'm interested in. And I'd like everyone to kind of learn why it's so great, which I think I'll let you explain. But I guess just sort of the long and short of it is that this allows people to get into a deeply meditative state that they wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve without maybe years or decades of practice and all that kind of good stuff. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll kind of put it in perspective when we do research, and we do a lot of it around the world, actually. One of our research partners in India, which we were just voted Researcher of the Year because we were using BrainTap there to show what ancient traditions do in modern technology, because we're in a different time period, right? Time used to move really slow. We now know time moves really fast. In Dr. Varun, we took a guru, let's say, they were a self-proclaimed guru. We measured what their brain was doing, and I brought somebody up on stage, and within 15 minutes, I had them mimic that brainwave state. And he said, well, you're cheating. And I said, what do you mean, Varun, we're cheating? He goes, well, you're using the device. It's using, light and sound to do it. And I said, well, have you ever meditated to a candle? And he said, oh, yeah, we meditate to candles all the time in India. I said, well, then you're cheating. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, candles are technology, but they're technology of a couple hundred years ago. A candle flickers at 10 hertz frequency. So what that means to the listener is 10 hertz is the resonant frequency, what we call the baseline of the brain for creativity, intuition, relaxation. There's a reason when you go take your bubble bath or you go to relax, you put a candle on, or if you're in a romantic getaway, you go start a fire, because your brain, there's something called frequency following response. Every cell has a mirror neuron in it. So in our environment that we're in right now, whatever environment you're in, your body is resonating with everything else you're around. I mean, everything, every individual thing, from the thoughts you think, to the food you consume, to the air that you breathe, to the people you hang out with. It's all interfering or interfacing, might be a better way to say it, with your genetic system. And so we're always resonating and vibrating. So when we go near the ocean, for instance, we go near a body of water, that body of water resonates also at 10 hertz frequency, so it creates alpha. Now, what most people don't realize is when your brain changes its profile from more of an alpha brain than a beta brain, which beta is where we're talking right now, the wide awake alert state. We call that our reactionary brainwave. So we're on alert. That's why we can get stuck in that and get a high stress. When we drop down into alpha, we become more relaxed. We start to create neurotransmitters. Now, there's 54 neurotransmitters. We're not going to go through all of them here today, but acetylcholine is the main one that I like to talk about with alpha. That's the feel-good, fall in love kind of neurotransmitter. So when somebody says they love the ocean, or they love burning candles, that's because the chemical reaction in their body is that of love, because the body is creating those sensations. Now, when you meditate, like a master meditator drops down into a level called theta. So again, with Varun, I said, do you ever wonder why the gurus go to the mountains to meditate? And he said, oh yeah, because they're secluded. I said, no, because they're cheating. And he said, what do you mean they're cheating? I said, mountains, the planet itself, if you and I, Hadley, were in your spaceship heading toward Earth, and we said, hey, what's the frequency of the Earth? It would resonate between 0.05 and 100. These are called earth frequencies. So if there's a storm going on, like a volcano going off, it might be 75. That's going to cause our body to get a high level of agitation, and we're going to run from that. It's going to be a physiological effect. That's why if we've ever walked into a room and parents are fighting and you can feel it, or there's been some tension there, you go, wow, you could cut this tension with a knife, because we are vibrating and resonating with things around us. Well, the theta frequency, by the way, when the gurus are sitting in meditation, I said the mountain resonates at 7.8 hertz frequency. They call it the Schumann frequency. That seems like the baseline of the planet. That's the one that most people look at. That when you're in a theta state, that's the Schumann state, 7.8 hertz frequency, you actually start to create Gaba. Now, the reason that's important for people is Gaba is probably the most researched neurotransmitter on the planet right now, because
What
most
we're all
people
chasing, right? I mean, it's
Yep,
what
yep,
everyone wants from
yeah,
Xanax.
yes. So we know that we produce an overabundance of that when you're using BrainTap, because most of our trainings are about theta. Now, GABA is a precursor to DMT. So anybody who's done any research about psilocybin or ayahuasca, all these other things, that's what's triggering in our brain. And I say triggering because everything happens because our brain has a reaction to it. That substance alone doesn't do anything. It's inert. But once we put it into our biological system and it triggers high level gamma brain waves, we start to create GABA, and then we create DMT, then we have these spiritual out of body kind of experiences. These are natural to us. But the problem is it's a very small brain wave, and most adults don't have enough theta. So they can't go to sleep. 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. So they don't have enough theta. That's why the researchers are out there. Before COVID, that was the most, now the most research is what is the next, vaccine they can create to make $1 billion. But the reality is that those aren't helping us sleep any better. 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping because they're not getting enough theta, not because they're not getting enough delta. Now, we do need delta, which, by the way, when you get the delta brainwave, that's when you produce your serotonin that
Right.
everybody's taking.
And that's
So,
the deep sleep, the deep delta sleep that
yeah.
everyone talks about. And I
Yes.
should probably just throw in an antidote, is that I have definitely used the BrainTap for all of these different kind of morning, afternoon, evening, and I don't fall asleep when I use it, except for when I put on the evening PM, and it's one of those things where I don't even, I wake up and it's turned off and I don't even remember what happened in between. Whereas the other programs, I'm fully, I don't fall asleep, I follow, and that one is just instant lights out for me. So it's really effective, I just want to say.
Yeah, and it doesn't bring you back. The others are taking you through a cycle. The nice thing, a normal sleep cycle, that's what we're imitating. We're taking a 4-hour sleep cycle and we're collapsing it to 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. But the sleep one, we're taking you down, we're taking you through cycles, but then we're dropping you off in delta. We're not bringing you back. Because we
Right.
want to train the brain, hey, it's time for sleep. It's time to, and that's when our brain recovers. For those that haven't learned what's been happening out there in the world of neurophysiology, we have something called the glial lymphomic system, which is our lymph system for the brain, which in physiology, they tell us every blood vessel, there's a lymph vessel. So if you're not into physiology, think of it like the garbage man of the system. It goes around picking up all the garbage, deposits out of the system. Most people, their lymph system is already clogged, and their brain is even worse, because if you don't get deep sleep, as an example, we did a research project in Australia with coal miners. The average person in our baseline study, this is before we did the BrainTap, the average person got 1.5 minutes of sleep. That was the average. That's all. You need 1 hour of deep sleep.
Oh, you mean 1 minute and a half of deep sleep?
Yeah, deep sleep. They were in bed for over 10 hours on average.
But not sleeping deeply.
Not sleeping. So time in bed is not the answer. It's efficiency. Sleep studies, longevity studies show 6.5 hours sleep is perfect, but it has to be good sleep. 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep. Some people can get an hour and a half of deep sleep, 3 hours of REM sleep. It seems to be whatever the number of deep sleep is, you need twice as much REM sleep to process it. Because that REM sleep is how you organize your day, process your memories, get ready for tomorrow and things like that.
I should probably add right here that none of none of this would really make any difference to us if we weren't able to measure it. But now we actually are. If you have a wearable like Apple Watch or, you know, the Samsung or some similar device, or the Ring for your finger, you can actually see how much deep sleep you're getting. And I think in the very recent past, we would have had no clue except for that vague sense of, oh, I slept well or not, you know, and now you can really measure it. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, we did a study with college students. We told them, without measuring anything, we had them use BrainTap for 5 days, don't use it for 2 days, then go back and use it. And they all kept using it after that, because they didn't realize that once you start feeling good, you think that that's what you always did, but it's not. You're getting, the deeper you sleep, you will feel more energized. And how you know that too is, hopefully, if you were used to getting up in the morning and just having coffee right away, you no longer need that. You might even skip coffee, because
Right.
the cortisol in the morning, you know, the sessions are designed to trigger that cortisol reaction and norepinephrine and cortisol levels to increase. And some people use coffee to do that, but if your body can do it, your own brain, now you're, you know, basically using your own neuro cognition to fuel your life, and you have more, that gives you more energy than less.
What is working here aside from the shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic, which is from fight or flight to rest and digest, which is what this device is so genius at helping people do? Is that how everything works, and then everything happens as a result of that, or are there other things happening as well?
Yeah, there's some other things happening as well. The one of the main things that's happening is, if you're using sound or light or vibration, every cell of our body has something called a chromophore. These are little batteries that are on every cell. So to give everybody an example, if you've ever been to a party and maybe you didn't really want to go there, but then they started playing all your favorite music, you'll start to dance. Your body will start to move, because once those cells fill with energy, the cell will share that energy with the other cell. It's called photobiomodulation, even if it comes in the form of sound, because our body is really good at translating anything into energy, making ATP for the cells. That's the end result of all biological activity. So, what we're going to do is we're going to deliver that right to the brain. Now, the reason that's important is that the brain uses 25% of the energy of the body, and if we go through the digestive system, even though some people will eat food when they're tired and they'll feel psychologically better, the reality is you don't get energy from food immediately when you eat it, you know, unless it's a sugar high and then you get the low. But in the brain, through the eyes, for instance, your eyes are closed and this flashing light, which is only 8 LEDs. To put in perspective, the computer screens we're looking at are 1,000,000. So these are only 8 LEDs, but it's enough to trigger the optic nerve. And the reason we're triggering, not the way we see, but the optic nerve, is when we trigger that nerve, the whole brain has to stay awake. Most people, when they meditate, 30% of their brain, and we've done 40,000 scans in the last 12 years. So we know what happens to the brain, and anybody out there in neuroscience knows, as soon as you close your eyes, you're going to start shutting down neural networks.
Yeah.
So that's what happens to people when they try to meditate and they just fall asleep, because that falling asleep is not really meditation. It's, you need to have an awakened. In fact, Anne Wise wrote a book called The Awakened Mind, where she went around the world. She was one of our researchers at Light and Sound Research. She's passed away now, but her book is still available. And she went around and created what's called the master brainwave. We still train to that brainwave today. That's what we're training you: 45% beta, 30% alpha, in 10% theta. When you're awake, that's the master brainwave. And the rest kind of falls into the gamma, delta category. But what happens is, we're bringing light energy in. Now, we're also bringing it in through the ears. So
Right.
the ears,
That's what I wanted to kind of show, because I think that's something that isn't really discussed a lot. And red light is really trending right now. People do finally understand how that helps ATP and, you know, all these great things, cellular processes for the body. And here you're putting it in the ear.
yeah.
How can you explain that?
Yeah.
What the benefits?
Yeah, so what's happening there, you can put light anywhere in the body and it will trace through the whole body through photobiomodulation, but we're putting it in the ears primarily because photic energy, whatever color it is, it doesn't matter. Red light energy, like you said, this is 650 nanometer light, so they know there's some really important properties there, and 470 nanometer light. And we find that mimics morning morning sunrises and sunsets. That's what we're trying to go after. And we've also encoded that language as that's being broadcast, even though it looks to be solid, it's actually flashing at the different Nogier frequencies. So
Oh,
every 2 minutes, it changes to another Nogier. We don't even really talk about that much because there's so much going on with the headset. We've stacked so many different biohacks into the brain, but that's changing it so that the brain cannot determine what's happening because every session is different. But when light energy hits the body, it's looking for hemoglobin. That hemoglobin will absorb the photic energy. Now, it does it all the time, all day long, not just with BrainTap. So when you walk out in the sun, it's doing it, but we're doing it very specifically with intention, with a certain frequency, and then the brain will follow that frequency. Now, the light energy is absorbed. It goes, all the blood in your body goes through your ears every 3 to 4 minutes, but it goes first through the brain, and that's what regulates the temperature of the brain. So if we want to get light energy into the brain, there's a few ways to do it, and one of the best ways is through the ears and
yeah.
through the eyes.
And
So your eyes,
inflammation and tinnitus, like all these things that can sort of work on outside of, the benefit outside of what people might be using this for.
and we're finding that when we measure people's brains, we do brain maps, that almost everyone, I'm saying over 90% of the people we see are predominantly delta when they're awake. So there's an old saying, the masses are asleep. And I always tell people they might not be asleep, but they certainly want to be asleep. And that's a sign of inflammation or traumatic brain injury. And I would say for most people, it's probably just chronic inflammation because they're not giving their body a break. They're stimulating all day long with coffee and tea and sugar. And just instead of taking a break that they need and really letting the body heal, they keep pushing the body. We are, as an example, light tells our body what to do all day long. If we don't get to bed by 10 o'clock at night, between 10 and 12, we make twice as much melatonin as we do any other time of the day. At 11 o'clock, our liver starts cleaning. Now, that's wherever you're at around the world, because that's why, and when somebody says they have jet lag, what they really have is light lag, because the body is trained. These bodies don't know that we're in an airplane traveling at 500 miles an hour or whatever. And, 1 minute we're in New Bern, North Carolina, the next, a few hours later, we're in California. And he goes, what the heck, what happened? So the body's trying to catch up. That's why when we reset the circadian rhythm, that's what we do with BrainTap. We've proven it over and over again. Sleep is the number one best thing people tell us when they start using it, even though we didn't design it for that. We designed it in the 80s for pain control, because once you get out of high beta states, when you see that high delta, you usually see a corresponding high beta. You don't see any alpha and theta. And that means that they're getting none of those feel-good neurotransmitters, and they wonder why mental health is where it is today. I believe it's a physiological problem more than it is a psychological problem. I think that people aren't moving, they're not breathing, they're not eating right, and they're not doing anything for brain fitness, and so that's what I've seen. We've obviously we see it in people's weight, but we also see it in their moods. That you feel better if you have more energy. If you're the person in the room with the most energy, you're going to get the most done. You're going to be the happiest, and that energy starts with the brain. So when you bring that light energy into the brain, the way light works in the brain, for those that don't know about red light therapy, but it's really true for any light, it circulates in the blood until it finds a cell that's about to die. They call apoptosis. And that cell, like a magnet, will attract the photic energy. And then it will start the Krebs cycle or start the cell's life again. It will really reinstate that cell. It won't die.
Can I make the leap that some of these brain issues that people have, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or on the other end of the spectrum, maybe just ADHD, they're hypothesizing that those are, or autism or any neurodiversity, that it's either inflammation in the brain and or a lack of energetics to certain parts of the brain so that things can fire.
Yeah.
Has there been any, research
Oh,
showing?
yeah. It's all about blood flow and circulation. If they don't have blood flow and circulation, you can take, like, people get chronic headaches. Well, if you take a rubber band to your finger and wrap it around your finger, that finger is going to start to hurt because of lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
So every time there's something called the Fibonacci sequence. that is really big out there in fractal dynamics. Well, our body is based upon that principle too. In light therapy, what they know is it creates vasodilation and blood flow, circulation increase. Each time you do it, it has a cumulative effect. So the first time it's going to make one capillary, let's say, and it makes multiple, but I'm just going to use one. So the first time it has one, the next time it does it, that capillary is already built. So it'll run the energy through that one, but it'll do that one and it'll do another one. That means it's built two. And so now each time now that two will become four and four will become eight. And it just keeps doubling until pretty soon your body has created all this massive blood flow in the brain. And where there's blood flow, there's also has to be a lymphatic drain. So now if you're getting deep sleep, what we've seen with one of the studies they did with PTSD with red light therapy that was done is they were able to bring down a hematoma by 30% in 6 weeks by using that, because you need to take out the toxin. Some people don't realize it. The trauma is still there because the brain will rewire around that trauma, but you can always clear it out. The brain will rebuild itself with the right stimulus.
You mentioned how long this device has been in the making, which I don't think a lot of people realize. If, they just come across this and see, they're like, oh, okay, here's a headset type thing, and even if you do understand what it's doing, I think most people without learning would not appreciate how many decades of research and work that this actually represents. And perhaps you're one of the people that is uniquely sort of able to do this, that have that sort of exact set of inputs that allowed this birth to happen.
Right. Yeah, we've had a lot of people try to mimic us or, try and take our idea. They don't realize there's an algorithm to it because there's a science to all of this.
Right.
It started actually with my dad being a Silva instructor and Jose Silva having something called the Silva sound. And it's a monochrome isochronic tone that you can use in a room and everybody's brain will sync to alpha. Now, the problem is, even though there's a lot of people on the internet that are claiming they're going to theta, and I would challenge them to come see us anytime we're in their area, because I've only seen a handful of people actually get to theta without light, sound, and vibration. I mean, even trained people that have been training for 20, 30 years, you'll see glimpses of it, but it's very hard to stay in that brainwave pattern. But I can take any person on earth after 3 sessions, they can stay in theta as long as our algorithm's present, because this is how the brain works. And we've been doing this with neuroscience now, we can measure it. So I think the main thing is that most people don't realize that there's a science to it. They think it's just flashing lights. And that's not, you can get a great experience with flashing lights. You can have like a psychedelic experience, even with bright light. There's a lot of people that come out with these bright lights that people stare at and they tell them, and it's bringing energy into the brain, but it's not changing brainwave entrainment. You have to, when you have the light, the sound, and the vibration, we're setting up, basically we're creating a field that the brain believes to be true, kind of like virtual reality, but you're creating it for yourself. There's no, the only stimulus is light, sound, and vibration, but the brain adds in the other components. It's kind of like being on the elevator and you start to hear your songs from high school and it didn't sound like it at first, but when you're in there a little bit long enough, you start to hear the melody, your brain will start to learn that algorithm, and then you can do it on your own. I mean, if somebody doesn't have their BrainTap, they are able to do it. They're able to relax because the brain now knows. We had a student at Quantum University that Dr. Cody Rawl, who's a pretty popular guy on YouTube, we brought him out to demonstrate, tech for the students. And we were using the Muse. And I think the Muse is a really great technology. It measures brainwaves, but it doesn't teach you to do anything. So you've got to know how to do it. So he took a student up there and she was struggling. When you get to alpha, you'd hear birds. Well, when I do that, I get 148 birds in 10 minutes. And she got 8.
Yeah.
Right. And most people would get between 30 and 40 maybe. And so I took her outside. I had her do an alpha session on BrainTap. I said, when you get into the session, just remember that feeling of being an alpha. We brought her back up on stage. She got 48. Wow. And Dr. Roll said, how did you do that so quick? She goes, well, Dr. Porter had me listen to an alpha session. She got to feel what alpha was like.
Right.
Now she could master. I said, any biofeedback, neurofeedback, we can have somebody master that in 1 or 2 sessions, because the brain doesn't learn the way they're trying to teach you. You don't learn by brute force. We learn by flow, and we learn by experiences. You know, anything you've learned by experience, you learn a lot better than somebody showing you on a chalkboard or showing you a movie.
And repetition, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. So we started with Silva. I was never going to do this. My dad did this, but we helped him do Silva trainings all over Lower Michigan. And I went to school for electronics. So kind of know where that's going now. So I'm out there helping my dad with the Silva, and I'm seeing people struggle with meditation. And then what I like to call a God wink, you know, I meet up with these people in Vegas that I don't know your beliefs in this, but I had a guy actually tell me the person's name and where I would meet her, and told me that I was going to revolutionize their technology and make BrainTap. And I have a cassette of this. That's how long ago it was. And I wasn't married at the time, and I let my wife listen to it. I said, you know, what I'm doing here, they knew about before I even did it. And when I went there, I met the person, the name he gave me, she was there. And at that event, the founder, Dr. Robinson, had died at home. He wasn't there, he was in Arkansas, and they didn't know what they were going to do with the technology. I just happened to be there at the right time. And I said, well, where are you going to go? We're going to go to Sedona first for a visit, but we're going to end up in Scottsdale. And I said, well, I'm in Scottsdale. I have an office there. Come by and we can reverse engineer this, because the doctor didn't leave any plans for anybody. He died and left no information about how to build this. Well, we didn't build that unit because what he built wasn't as good as what we could build. But we got in there and learned about what he was doing. There was a couple of people in the research at that time, and there were 6 of us. We all got together and we created the very first one called the MC Square.
What year was that, roughly?
That was in 86.
86. So this is a long time coming with many iterations in between.
Yeah. And then before 2013, you had to go through a clinic to get this equipment. And then from 2013 to about 2018, we only sold it through our providers, our medical providers. Right. And then we started an app. And when the app hit, we thought, we can sell this to anybody, or anybody can use it, because now you can download it and deploy it over the internet.
Sure.
And that changed everything. And that's why we're getting so much popularity now, because before I didn't know that people could kind of grasp the concepts and do it like what you did. I mean, we probably just sent you a headset and you started using it without having to have a doctor explain it to you. And because of the internet, now we don't have to sell you a CD or a cassette or whatever. You can just download it on the app. So, you know, we're growing like crazy because now we can deploy it. Before, I thought you had to go to a doctor to, you know, understand it, but I don't think that's true anymore.
I think people are getting more sophisticated. Certainly the biohackers can be, I would say, trusted with complex instructions, but in general, yeah, anyone can do it. I had actually tested it on like my parents and some of my relatives, and it's interesting to see the responses where my mother just came out transformed, and you know, she's in her 70s and she had been a little anxious, and it just really, she felt amazing. Like she'd had a 3-hour massage and just, you know, from 20 minutes. And then, you know, her husband, not as, he's like, oh, this guy's talking, you know, he wasn't quite sure what to do with the whole thing, you know. And so it's interesting, the different responses. And maybe I'll even say my own, the actual first time I saw it, I did have a little bit of experience. I was seeing a chiropractor in Miami that was using it pre-adjustment to kind of get you relaxed. But it wasn't exactly explained like what it was. And the first time I did it, I wasn't quite sure, you know, it was a little odd, you know, and I'm fairly receptive, but I was like, you know, what is this? I didn't know. They didn't explain it. And then I think the next time I saw it was at the biohacking conference in Orlando. And I don't know if I got a chance to actually use it. And then when I got a device and started using it, it's been transformative. And I've had, you know, my husband use it, and it's a family thing. I even actually put it, how should I say, I have it hooked up through an app that is on my old iPhone, so that whoever wants to use it, you know, it's already set up, and that phone isn't anybody's phone. So it just makes it really easy, you know, so in case I'm on a call or something while my husband wants to use it. So that's how in demand it is around my house.
Have you had a neuro check where they checked your nervous system before and after using BrainTap?
I went in Mexico to a retreat that was sort of a nervous system oriented thing, and I did a QEEG. but that was in May, and I started using this later. And I have not really done a specific before. I'd love to be a guinea pig. I'd love
Are
to.
you, where are you located?
Miami.
Yeah, we're gonna be in Miami in a couple weeks.
I
At
know.
the Biohacking Expo. So come by and see me. We'll get you on. We'll do a pre and post test, and you can share that with your audience too. It's a
Absolutely.
really fun test, and we, what we find is about a 30%. Now for you, because you've already been using it, you're going to be probably, hopefully better starting out. But when we find somebody who's never used it, usually we get about a 30 to 35% neurological improvement, especially because they're traveling to a show and things like that. But we'll have it there at the Biohacking Expo.
I think it's helped me a lot. I think it's helped me, stay focused, get up and be like, okay, I'm going to tackle this, get this done, get this started. And, when you're working for yourself, sometimes you need that extra motivation a little bit.
I think to help them out, you need to be able to unlock and be creative. I think some people overestimate, they think they're supposed to be right on 24 hours a day. I don't know one successful person in sports, but when it's time to bear down and be focused, that's the key, is can you bear down and focus when it's necessary? But you want to be able to freewheel and have creativity and inspiration. That's what, I think they make people think, I was one of those daydreamers. I was held back in second grade because I was a daydreamer, and I was more of an artist than I was a student. But then I realized through doing the Silva method that I could focus when it was time to focus, and I became an honor roll student, and it was just a matter of focus.
I definitely was a big window looker outer.
Yeah,
That's my
there's some value
favorite.
to that.
I think, at least certainly among the biohacking audience, you are kind of a rock star. And I think people who use BrainTap, they'll recognize your voice because you are guiding quite a few of the sessions, which is really cool. And then it made me think, wait, which session does he use when he wants to use BrainTap? Are you listening to yourself or one of the other narrators?
I listen to everyone that I mix, obviously. So I'm probably one of the only people that has listened to almost all of them. There's a few that I haven't listened to because I do have some other engineers now. But
Yeah.
back before, I was the one engineering everything. But I listen to my own. We're actually working on an app where people can record the scripts of their own voice. I believe your voice is most important to you, but of course, there's a good number of people that will never record their own voice.
I did try in 2022 for the first time hypnosis, which I had never. I'll admit I'd kind of been a little doubtful, like, is that a thing? Is that real? And then I did it and it was extremely effective. Is there something connected? Is this hypnosis also? Is there an element of that? Is it borrowing from that?
Well, I'm a psychologist, but my background is Ericksonian hypnosis and NLP. I trained with Bandler and Grinder, the founders of NLP as well. I think Bandler says it's best. He said everything is hypnosis or nothing is hypnosis. The biggest difference when people ask me the difference between prayer, hypnosis, and BrainTap, let's say, in the brain state, if I was to put you on a QEEG like you did at that lab, the brains are not going to look any different. Whether you're in deep prayer, deep hypnosis, BrainTap, they're all going to be the same. It's how did you get there? So what we're using light, sound, and vibration. We're using the body's physiology to get you there. Of course, you could do hypnosis with it. We have some hypnotists on the app where we've got their sessions of hypnosis on there. And it's all about languaging. How are they languaging it? I don't let anyone on the app that's using negative programming because I don't think that works. A lot of times hypnosis will use negative, what they call negative hallucinations. Like when you look at a cigarette, you'll see death or whatever, things like that. Those don't work in the long run. They'll work short term, but they won't work in the long run. But I think hypnosis is a powerful tool for a therapist to use. And if you learn how to do it, like in Joe Dispenza's book, You Are the Placebo, he talks about it because we're always hypnotizing ourselves. That simply means what are we convincing ourselves in? So sometimes it takes an external person. And my franchise company, I had 108 locations. Those were hypnosis franchises. But they did other therapy too, but we primary specialized in hypnosis for weight loss, stop smoking, stress reduction, phobias, and things like that.
Because there are 2,000 of them. That's a lot. Anything that you could possibly want to be able to achieve or to do. And I think actually, for example, the way I got my father to try it was I said, oh, there's a golf program for you to play better golf, you know, and he's like, all right, I'll try it, you know. And I feel like sometimes you need to wave the little carrot, you know, weight loss, you know, be a better athlete, have more motivation, you know, all those things that you can do.
Yeah, we do a lot with golf. I don't know if you heard, but in Seminole College down in Florida, they're now 4-time national champion, and they put in we have a brain tapping room for them, and they use brain tap, and they use it as a recruitment tool. If you go to Seminole College's website, they actually have a whole page about brain tap,
Right.
because they use it to recruit people because it helps with their mental clarity. But we were able to improve their alpha, which is in golf is really important because you got to be able to just really focus for that 4 seconds you're swinging the club or whatever, maybe less than 4 seconds. And we were able to improve their alpha by 90%. And these were the world-class athletes to begin with. So, and I think that's why like TBRX, the Tom Brady Group, the Total Body Recovery Group, we work with them for sports because you need to be able to recover. Recovery is key for physical fitness. A lot of people are into, you know, you can do all the biohacks, but if you never recover, you're not going to get the gains. The gains come in the recovery, not in the doing. So the muscles, ligaments, tendons, the brain, the neurotransmissions, everything like that happens when you're in recovery.
So there's a few sort of music only programs on there. Is this very special music that has been orchestrated a certain way, or?
Yeah, our music is just off center too, because the hemispheres are going to try to, how a binaural beat works is we're going to put, let's say we want to get a 10 hertz frequency, which should be alpha. We put a 310 hertz in one ear and a 300 in the other. The brain doesn't hear the 300 or the 310, it only hears the 10 hertz. And they call it a phantom sound. So what we're doing is everything about what we do is training the brain to do something. So the music is called 10 cycle music. So what 10 cycle music does, there's a whole research out there called the Mozart effect. They've shown that if you listen to like new age, Baroque, classical music, that kind of music, you're just smarter. You don't have to do anything. You like they put that, they played in the classroom, your recall, because everybody has a genius level brain. It's just they don't have access to the genius level brain. So think about it like you put your brain into a space where it's actually operating in its whole state. And that's what this kind of music does. And that's why we ask you to use earphones. Now, for kids and sometimes even adults will listen to they'll just put their phone across the room and they'll play it at night because they don't want to have anything on their head. Or maybe they're compromised, like some of the kids that are on the spectrum, they can't put it on their head, but they can still get the benefits in mono. It's just not going to be strong.
That is a question that I had in terms of, you know, it is an app, and I'm sure a lot of people are only using it on their earbuds, not with the BrainTap device, which, you know, it's I think you can probably tell me the exact price, but it's 500 and something.
The headset is $649.
It's not an inexpensive thing. So there's probably quite a few people just using it on the app. And I guess my question to you is, obviously the app's got to be effective, but what are the differences, or what can you gain out of just the app?
With just the app, we started doing studies with that. Most of our studies are with just the app, because when you deploy big studies, we're not going to give out 1,000 headsets.
Right.
And like when we beat out opioids in Brazil, when we say we beat them out is when we had somebody everybody got their opioids because they're in pain. So we couldn't take somebody off of it. They wouldn't do the study without giving them the opioids. But in the group that used BrainTap, they didn't increase their opioid use, and they were able to get off the opioids at the time the doctor said, with no withdrawals. Wow. The people with opioids, they all went up in their dosage as they used it, and they all either didn't get off pain control or they kept going. So in Brazil, they actually call BrainTap, the BrainTap app, a digital drug.
Wow.
Because it will have an effect. Now in the sleep study we did there in Australia, we had a group that just used the headset and another group that used the app. The group that used the headset got 70% sleep improvement in 3 weeks. The group that used the app alone, it took them 6 weeks to get to that level. So you can still do it. And the group that used the headset, they could use it only once a day. The group that used the app alone, we had them using it 3 times a day.
Okay, so you have to use it would the approximation of saying like maybe 3 times as much?
Yeah, well, we know that when you close your eyes to meditate, 30% of your brain shuts down. So the same thing's true when you use the sound of the app. So we had to teach them to stay awake.
I'm using it for sleep and I do fall asleep so quickly, but we're all sort of getting this information that blue lights are, a signal to be awake and should be avoided before you sleep. And yet these are blue LED lights over my eyes and I am falling asleep like that. So how?
Because that's wrong information.
Okay.
A lot of people, if you're selling blue blocking glasses, you're gonna talk about that. The
Right.
problem is that the light that we expose you to is so low level.
Right.
I mean, there's blue light all the time.
Sure.
It's
Every
not
light.
like, yeah, it's not like there's never any blue light. These are 8 LEDs. And LED has they call it an interim of light. How far does it penetrate? Blue light doesn't even penetrate. They're talking about your eyes are open too. Hopefully your eyes are closed,
Yeah.
because that light doesn't even penetrate your eyelids.
Okay.
That's how long the length is. So every one of our studies use blue light, and it
Right.
resets the circadian rhythm. Like I did a whole study with flying, and I did that for Tom Brady's group, because I showed them, wonder why there's a home field advantage. I'm going to show you, anybody gets on an airplane and flies across the country, you're going to compromise your nervous system. Every hour in the air is like getting an X-ray.
Yeah. I feel
So
terrible flying always. I
yeah,
hate to adjust.
so what I showed them was, usually when I'm here in New Bern, I'm 90 to 100% all the time neurologically, and you'll see when you do the test what I'm talking about. So I have these really nice slides that I show, and I show this slide of me leaving New Bern. This is what my brain looked like. I land, I'm at 40%,
Right.
and I'm comfortable. I fly hundreds of times a year. I have no trouble. I don't get stressed.
Right.
I feel like I'm comfortable and relaxed, but my body wasn't. My brain was, but my
Work in
body.
the air like pilots.
Oh yeah, we've done studies with pilots too. But what I showed them was, then I get to the hotel room, I do a BrainTap session, I do my HRV, my neuro check scan, I'm back to 100%. Because
Wow.
my body knows what to do. It just needed to be reset.
Right. It's like filling up your
So
tank.
yeah, and so I tell people, it's what, like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan till they get hit. We're all going to get hit. There's going to be a stressful thing happen, right? Something's going to happen in your life. What are you doing to bring your nervous system back to balance? Whether that's 100%, 60%, 80%, whatever, you've got to have so the more you practice keeping your body at a peak potential, now when it gets hit, now I know too, because we've done it where I didn't do that, even though I do a brain tap every day, but I did it in the morning before I left on the airplane. I still got hit, when I went on the airplane, but it took 4 days, and I had to do just my own meditation during that time because it was a washout period. But then it took about 4 days to get back to my 100%.
Yeah.
And that's about normal for people. Like when a pilot flies from San Francisco to China, we did a whole study with Michael Orlig, who was a student of mine at Quantum University. He went, and we didn't have this technology at the time he did that study, but they have other neurological markers they use for pilots. And we showed that when they did a brain tap on the plane, because they have a little room they can go to and do their brain tap session. And when they were flying, if they did a brain tap session on the plane, they did it when they landed, they were neurologically better in 4 hours than they were in 4 days.
Wow. That's a big deal.
Because the sooner you can reset your nervous system, now they wouldn't let them fly for 4 days because that's the standard, or 3 days, whatever the standard was. But they were using a lot of alcohol and drugs to try to get their nervous system back. And of course, that just puts it out of whack. Well, the reason we did it was he was a pilot for United at the time, and they have a big problem with that. I mean, they get checked before they can fly, and some of them had alcohol in their system. If your nervous system isn't working right, you're not going to metabolize it and digest food or alcohol at the same rate you would if you were optimized.
This is new technology, and obviously new technology is always expensive. But do you see a day when this might be available sort of to everybody?
Our goal is to come out with a less expensive model at some point, and we're actually in development of it, and it will use full spectrum light. not blue light. It actually, they're already encoded. Every session you listen to already has full spectrum light encoded into it. So it will change color based on the frequency of your brain.
Oh,
And that's already done. It's just that the chip, back in 2010, Apple started making the iPads and they took the chip that we used to use. Now we have a new way of doing it. And it's in production right now, our prototypes. And if it works out, we're going to have a sleep mask by the end of summer.
oh,
That
very,
will be a lot less, and you can sleep in it, and you'll be able to take the technology out and wash the mask. So if you get makeup on it or something like that, you can clean it, or if you sweat in it or whatever.
a lot of people who are, work very hard and, don't maybe get a lot of sleep, might be working a couple jobs. Like you think about how this might be able to soothe their nervous systems and help them sleep better. As a country, like we could run better if everybody had a brain tap.
Right, exactly. I mean, if we could get the stress out and get people sleeping, they'd activate their internal superpowers and we'd have a great place to live. But stress is causing a lot of issues. I mean, people don't make good decisions when they're stressed out, angry. That's why in psychology, we have the stop sign, stressed, tired, obsessive, and in pain. You don't make decisions. Well, that's about everybody so it's like they need to be doing something.
It's true. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for getting on here with me today and sharing all of your deep, deep, deep knowledge about this amazing thing that you've created.
Well, I think if hopefully you're going to share a link with them, and in that link, they can at least listen to the app for 14 days for free.
Okay.
If you love it, then it'll just roll over. 70% of the people that do that will continue to purchase it because they find there's a benefit. If you're one of the 30%, you just have to cancel before that 14th day. You won't be charged. The best thing is to do a little experiment on your own. Like I said, if you're doing the trial, do the 5 days on, 2 days off, 1 day back on, and you'll see how it affects you. And that usually convinces people, that they're getting something. Because if you don't have a way to measure it. Now, if you have a smartwatch or a device, like if you're a biohacker, you'll know, usually people start to see an improvement in their deep sleep right away. And
Yeah.
you'll start to feel more energy and just have better outlook on life when you're sleeping better.
We'll definitely link to that so people can give it a try and do the trial, which is very generous to offer for 14 days. I think that's enough to really get your head around it. So thank you so much, Dr. Porter, and I will be in touch and see you at the conference.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right, see you there.
All right, thank you.